and welcome to my channel. My name is Venus and today I'm doing the Get to Know the Fantasy Reader tag. So I was tagged by Theo from Rekindled Reader, fantastic channel, wonderful book reviews. Definitely check out his channel. I will link it below. I don't know if he just mentioned me in that or if he actually tagged me, but if not, I'm gonna tag myself. But if anything, he did mention me, so definitely check out his channel. Again, wonderful. And the aesthetic of his videos are goals. So definitely check out his channel. So let's get started. The first question is, what is your fantasy origin story? Basically, what kind of books got you into fantasy? I have been reading since elementary school. I read a lot of like mystery type books. I mentioned it in like my booktube newbie tag, but Cam Jensen's mystery. I'm also a lot older than most of you, so you may not even know these books. But so Cam Jensen mystery books and Banicula. So those are, you know, mystery. Banicula is kind of like, I guess, like dark fantasy, horror fantasy. But I liked like the weird stuff. And then as I got older, I really fell in love with Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. I read that book so many times, watched the movie a million times, and Jurassic Park, which is one of my favorite books of all times. So none of these are like considered like classic fantasy books, but I knew that I loved reading books set in worlds outside of our own. Well, Jurassic Park is not set outside of our own, but you know, like sci-fi. But of course, back then there was no booktube and none of my friends were reading, so I didn't really have and didn't really know, I guess, the terminology fantasy, like the genre, like, oh, that's a genre. So I wasn't made aware of it. And I was just also in love with Conan the Barbarian. I was probably way too young to be watching these movies, but my father loves like fantasy movies and horror, and I got really into them. Definitely like just love those movies. I haven't watched them in years, so it's probably like super corny looking at them now. Just that like these worlds that were created, like Conan and King Arthur, anything like set in the Middle Ages with like swords and wizards and fighting. I just gravitated towards that. It's always been like my favorite. As I got older, still mostly just reading like Stephen King horror, a lot of like mystery, crime thrillers and things like that. And then Harry Potter came out and I was obsessed. I was absolutely obsessed. I loved everything about the books, the world building, the characters, and I was just like, I need more of this. And still really didn't find much like it. Like you would Google like things similar to Harry Potter, and like Aragon came up, and I tried to read those books and I didn't enjoy it as much. I don't even think I finished Aragon. I think I DNF'd it. I just wasn't invested in it. Anyway, I say all of that to say it took a very, very long time, because then I started watching booktube, and over the last 3 years I have been obsessed with reading all things fantasy. So I'm catching up. I've gotten a good bulk of things that I really wanted to read under my belt so far this year, especially. So that was a really long answer to that question. I'm sorry, but it was very convoluted. So it took me a while to get here. So here we are. Question number 2. If you could be a hero in a story, who would be the author and what trope would you insist on? I'm gonna say George R.R. Martin, even though we're not gonna talk about his writing issues right now, but this is make-believe. So if I could, George R.R. Martin, I would want to be in Westeros, and some kind of trope, like chosen one trope. Yes, I feel like that would be so fun. Would I survive? Probably not, but I would still have fun in that world. So that's what I would want. Question number 3, what is a fantasy book you've read this year that you want other people to read? Assassin's Apprentice. Anything by Robin Hobb. I put it off for years, like the last 3 years. I kept putting it off, and because I was afraid I was going to find them boring or just the prose very flowery and I wasn't going to get into it. And I've talked about this quite a few times on my channel, but I've fallen in love with her writing. It is absolutely beautiful. So if you have Robin Hobb on your TBR, make it a priority to get to her books, because you will not be disappointed. Her prose are beautiful. Fitz's story is beautiful. just everything. The character development, the characters, so good. So I highly recommend Assassin's Apprentice. Number 4, what is your favorite fantasy subgenre and what is the one that you haven't read much from? So my favorite is Grimdark, Song of Ice and Fire, First Law World by Joe Abercrombie. I'm obsessed. I love morally gray characters. I love gore. I love fighting. I love deaths. I love all the things. And I'm looking for more Grimdark recommendations. So if you have any, please put them down below because I love them. Just finished Best Served Cold and by Joe Abercrombie and loved every second of that book. So I'm open to more suggestions. So Grimdark. And subgenre that I have not read much of at all, but I definitely want to read more of, or even start reading, I don't think I've even read anything in this subgenre, is historical fantasy. I'm definitely going to prioritize The Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell. I am really excited to get into a world kind of set around that King Arthur legend, so that is definitely way up there on my TBR, hoping to get to it at some point this year.
Hello there, I am editing this video and realized I completely forgot to answer question number 5, which is who is one of your auto-buy authors, and that is going to be John Gwynne. I've loved all of the books so far that I've read by him, and also Joe Abercrombie, so I will definitely buy whatever books that they come out with because I've loved all of the books by them. I would also say Brandon Sanderson, but I haven't quite read enough of his books, like I haven't even gotten into the Stormlight Archives yet, but I have a feeling he would probably also be an auto-buy author for me. So just wanted to let you guys know that I completely skipped that question. So back to the regular program.
Question number 6, how do you typically find fantasy recommendations? Definitely Bookstagram and Booktube. They have been huge lifesavers for me. I've found my people. All of the booktubers that I watch and the new ones that I've formed some relationships with have been such an influence on my reading this year, and I've read some fantastic fantasy books, so I'm very grateful for this community, and I can't wait to keep on reading these amazing books. So, question number 7 is upcoming fantasy release you're excited about. So there's a couple. One is actually a young adult. It's called Bloodmarked. It is the second book by Tracy Deonn. First book was Legendborn. I have a thing for King Arthur retellings, but this is also a young adult King Arthur retelling. I can't wait. That book comes out on November 8th. I am also really looking forward to Fairy Tale by Stephen King. I cannot wait to read that book. And another book actually just recently came out called Babel by R.F. Kuang, and I've heard a lot of really great reviews about it. I'm not really into dark academia, or I haven't really read any aside from Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I really enjoyed that, but usually I just find them really boring. So I'm actually really interested in seeing where I fall with that book. So I am looking forward to reading that as well. Just kidding, Ninth House is not considered dark academia. It's been a while since I read it. I just know it took place at a college. Don't mind me. Question number 8 is, what is one misconception about fantasy you like to lay to rest? I mean, I'm not going to get really deep into this question. I know a lot of times, like when people ask me what I read and I tell them fantasy, you kind of get that like weird look like,
why would you want to read books that set in our world and with like wizards and swords and things?
And I'm like, you are missing out on imagination and themes that are just go way beyond your like misconceptions. So yeah, I've had lots of like, conversations with people about that, but I mean, or that, only nerds read fantasy. It's just, I don't pay any attention. So stop stereotyping fantasy readers, okay? Just stop. Question number 9, if someone you know that doesn't read a lot of fantasy asks for a recommendation, what are the first 3 books that come to mind? I'm definitely going to say, especially if you've watched these movies, Harry Potter, and if you love them, read the books. It's true, the books are always better than the movie. So definitely Harry Potter, definitely Lord of the Rings, and definitely The Hobbit. So absolutely, if you've never even read a fantasy book, and you love those movies, read the books. because they are better, 100%. And I know this is more than 3, but I also want to mention Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, especially if you've never read a fantasy book, but you definitely want that little mystical creature, just cool setting with coffee, and very digestible and easy to read and quick read and just heartwarming read. For a very, very beginner fantasy reader, I highly, highly recommend Legends and Lattes. And then I will agree with what most people say if you're kind of wanting to get a little deeper, really into like a lot of world building and a little bit of more of a challenge. This is kind of where I started a couple years ago, is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. It's got like that heist vibe, wonderful characters, fantastic world building, and the coolest magic system, which I will say, because I was new recently when I read these books, the first time I read Mistborn, I was like, what the hell is this coin pushing and pulling? And I could not get my mind around it. I couldn't visualize it. It was like, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm an idiot. I don't know what's happening. I don't understand this. But as I kept reading and really like using the glossary or little like kind of descriptions that Brandon Sanderson gives you, it definitely like finally clicks. So don't give up. And that's with any fantasy book. Don't give up in the first like 100 pages, because trust me, there's been a lot of books that I start reading and I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I don't understand. This is so confusing. And then it's like, it just clicks and then it becomes amazing. So don't cheat yourself. Push through it and hopefully everything will click. Actually, that's happening with me right now. I am reading The Fifth House by N.K. Jemisin, and I don't know what the hell's going on, but the cool thing is her writing style is awesome. It's different, and so far, even though I don't know what's going on, I am enjoying it. So just push through it. Push through it. You will understand eventually, hopefully, and if not, it's okay. Just move on to the next one. I also wanted to mention, so outside of Mistborn, I also, speaking from a semi-beginner, it's been a few years, I also highly recommend Warbreaker and Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. I love those 2 books so much. His writing is phenomenal. They were very easy to follow. The characters were fantastic. Warbreaker has 2 sisters in it, and the world is really cool. And Elantris was one of my favorite books from last year that I just gushed about in one of my earlier videos, and I loved it so much. I think the world in that, Elantris itself, and it's got some religion thrown into it, like a twist on certain things. It's great. So I also recommend those 2 in addition. So, and the last question is, who is the most recent fantasy reading content creator that you want to shout out? And I will link them all below. I've talked about a lot of them before on my channel, because this community is amazing. Again, there's just so many people that can just so eloquently describe books and give book reviews, as I just like kind of, stumble through them and let you know how enjoyable they are. But if you want like that deep dive into the themes and the history and all of that stuff, there are some wonderful booktubers out there. But for me, you're just gonna get why it's a good read and how much I enjoyed it. So we're not going to go any deeper than that here. But thank you, as always. That's it. That was the last question. Thanks, Theo, for the mention again. I appreciate you guys, as always, for stopping by and hanging out with me. If you are new here, welcome. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you guys again soon. See ya.